So one day, this guy Tim, he goes on a game show and he says this.
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do.
3 years later, after this episode airs, his wife is found unalive. And this video of Tim suddenly starts trending. Why? So Tim is actually married to this woman, Becky. And they've been married 11 years and they got a couple of kids. But one day he goes on Family Feud and he makes a joke about hating his wife. And everyone laughs and people dismiss it as typical boomer humor. But maybe it wasn't, because about a year after the game show, Tim and Becky start the process of getting a divorce. I guess they had been fighting a lot and now they can't stand each other. So Tim moves into a house about a mile away. And now they're separated, but they're still fighting. A lot. Like fighting over custody, fighting over money, fighting over the house. He files a protective order against her for stalking and harassing. It gets denied by a judge. She files a protective order against him. It gets denied by a judge. So finally, a judge orders just for Tim and Becky to stay away from each other unless they're dropping off the kids. A judge also orders Tim to return a 9mm pew-pew that actually belongs to Becky. And that pew-pew will become important later. Now, during this time, Becky starts dating someone new, who we'll call New Guy. And things seem to be going okay with New Guy. They're getting along well. They even have a little romantic evening at her house on Valentine's Day. So she's trying her best to move on. Regardless, about a week before Tim and Becky's actual divorce hearing, Tim finally snaps. Now, it's a normal night and the kids are at Tim's house, but they're asleep. So Tim gets Becky's 9mm pew-pew and he sneaks out of his house while the kids are still sleeping. And he gets a blue bicycle he has, one that has no reflectors on it so no one will spot it. And he discreetly pedals all the way to Becky's house. Then he climbs up the side of her house to her upstairs window and he pries it open and he creeps inside. Then he makes his way over to Becky's room and boom, he kicks the door down. And Becky wakes up and she panics and she grabs her phone and she runs into the bathroom and she tries to dial 911. And then she turns around to shut the door and blam! Tim shoots her, knocking the phone out of her hand before she could complete her dial. Then he shoots her 13 more times. Then he leaves. He doesn't steal anything, he doesn't mess anything up, he just leaves. And unfortunately, Becky's father finds her the next day and she doesn't make it. And of course, police look into this, and immediately Tim is their #1 suspect. But he has an alibi. He's like, no, I was watching my kids that night. But police are not buying it. They get a search warrant, and they search his computer, and they find a bunch of stuff. They find that he set up a fake Facebook account recently to look at bikes for sale, specifically bikes without reflectors. Then they search the area around his house, and they find that someone ditched a blue bike, one without reflectors. They also go through his search history and they find that he Googled things like how to make a homemade pistol silencer and how to clean gunpowder off your hands. You know, stuff that murderers search for. They also find that on Valentine's night, the night Becky was at home with her new guy, Tim had Googled new guy's license plate number and car VIN number over 200 times. I guess he had seen new guy's car there and he was trying to figure out who this person is who was doing his ex-wife. Police also find shell casings connected to the murder weapon and just a bunch of stuff. So Tim is arrested. Here's his mugshot. Get a haircut, hippie. And he's charged with first-degree murder. He goes to trial. He's found guilty and he's sentenced to life. So I wonder if saying I do is still his biggest regret.